we shall begin the second part. And as you all can see, I have a map of Iceland. And why Iceland? Of all the places, why Iceland? Well, when we were developing the setting for our autumn holiday, this type of biome was brought up with the prompts that we had randomly rolled together. And if we're going to make a dungeon, and especially an outdoor dungeon, why don't we also take a look at what are the outdoors like here? Ah, thank you, Rip Artist. And this is something you all can do if you would like to take a moment to understand the world in which we live, the way that we have come to understand ourselves, if not just on a personal individual level, then ourselves as humans who live in different places and have different ways of life to reflect the geography, the geology, the weather, the climate, the effects of the seasons on migration, on plant life, on all of this. And if we get an understanding for these universal scientific concepts, we can build better worlds. We can build better dungeons. We can present things with more detail because we understand more and better how it works. Well, welcome back, Kitty Bird. I will try to bore you to sleep with this workshop, okay? So if you stick with us, I will speak as dully and a monotone as possible to try and just knock you right back out, all right? So just give me a chance. And, yeah, it's this kind of a non-committal, like, ugh. Let's review the setting real quick. Bloop. It wasn't that one. There we go. In our setting document, we had randomly rolled, and for Tamashi and others, or Sokka if you prefer, or if you want the full name, hey, let me know. Over the course of last week and this, we have been going through worksheets, randomly rolling some prompts, like what you saw in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So if you're playing along at home, hey everyone, get your DMGs out, open it to page about 100. Hi, Gamer Curse. Open it about to page 100, and you can follow along with the idea of what we're going to be doing. But we had an area that was mountainous and coastal. And so, I mean, primarily for just that alone, here is a place that is mountainous and coastal. The form of government was a militocracy. There are 3 major landmarks to the setting here. There's a sealed pyramid, an intact statue of a person, and a dead magic zone. The dominant race here are gnomes, with dwarves being in the minority, and the racial majority are conquerors. And this was indicating, all right, there's some kind of strife. There could have been a physical confrontation, or it could have been an economic one. It could have been a battle of whose devices might be better, or it was just a cultural takeover. Gnomish culture just, it took over the dwarvish culture. And that could be a sense of conquering in that sense. That could be a conquering in that sense as well. This place is run by a mysterious anonymous cabal. It is known for a great hero, though the current calamity of our setting is that an important figure died, and murder is suspected. So, what can we do with this as our setting prompt, let alone what we had recorded? Oh. That's an example of another of a holiday that I'll get to as an example. So the holiday name is the Battle of the Coming Dark. This is to remember the end of the Great War that fused Dwarven and Gnomish society in their fight against the elves. And the elves are either foreigners from another land or some sort of alien invader, and by that, possibly a celestial. And in this case, where could the elves have come? From, not Greenland? From not United Kingdom? From not Norway? From not Svalbard? Or from space? We went through some traditions, and primarily, this is a holiday where no... yes, thank you, John. They're from Schmorway. They are Schmorwegian. They are not Norwegian. This is not, an analogous, one-to-one. And we actually did have a good conversation about it's absolutely fine to look into our real life for inspiration and to find an understanding of how things work, because then in our fantasy settings we can alter physics, we can introduce how magic is a part of things or other new concepts. But it does help to come up for air every once in a while and make sure that that we want our creativity to flow. And sometimes you get into a groove and you are just, yes, this is my manic 4 a.m. world building time. And you just go all out and you're researching books and everything. It is good to come up for air and make sure that in the process, that we haven't succumbed to our own availability heuristics, or that we aren't somehow empowering a stereotype. Now, that's a big line in the sand, and I can't tell you exactly. That goes into another philosophical concept called the heap paradox. But in general concept, I want you all to create. I want you to open your heart, mind, and soul to the process and to learn about the world in which we live. And to make sure that for your creations, you at least understand the context for why it exists. And if that happens, I mean, people can say what they want because people can have their own understandings or misunderstandings. But if you know the context and you know that, what you've made is just, it stands strong on its own. This is completely its own thing. That's why you often see the disclaimers in movies and stuff like this is a work of fiction. Any coincidences to blah, blah, blah are coincidental. So be sure to come up for air, but I want you to have those amazing deep dives into the lore and history and the physics and science of your world and how it exists or doesn't, because you get that power to wield reality. So anyway, this is a celebration of darkness, and it is going to rely, what we're going to do is going to rely on dark as well. And we have a lot of backdrop from this setting to make our dungeon come alive with what it is that we had explored earlier. Yep, they could be from a different plane, Artemis. We hadn't specified it, but something like that can become more clear through a process like this. Also, I'm sorry, Gamer Curse, because you had said, I just got Wonder Draft, now I'm learning how to make maps that don't look like doo-doo. Wonderdraft is an excellent mapping program. I have it as well. I can recommend it. I mean, hashtag not sponsored. I can recommend Wonderdraft. I've never been a DM, but I really want to make an entire campaign from scratch. Gamer Curse, this is the place to be. We've done it over and over. And I'm not saying that in like, oh, come on, we got to do this again. No, I'm happy to do it. And we have a ton of resources for you, Gamer Curse, to be able to draw examples from and to give you ways to think, to get those seeds planted to grow your world. And as we go through workshops like this, you and others are absolutely welcome. Like Tamashi, if you're still here with us, you are always welcome to ask questions along the way. I am not here to just lecture to you all. I can, and I hope I can make it entertaining, get a smile and a laugh or whatever. But you can also ask questions if something comes up. Ah, very good then, After Fav. Gamercur says, right now I'm just trying to find a reason for my bard to stay with the party. If there's not one in any sort of feasibility, it's absolutely fine. Because look, people break up in relationships or friendships, or family doesn't get along and there's a split. And if your bard doesn't want to be in a group of people who are, psychotic traveling murderers, if that's the case, it's kind of reasonable that you don't want to be implicated with a group of murder hobos. Again, I don't know the conditions of your table, but sometimes it's as simple as that. You just say, I'm sorry, but this character would not stick around for this. I don't mind, I as the player, I'm having fun, but this character is absolutely not jiving. And just going to the town guard and giving him 5 gold saying I'm sorry is not going to fix it. Dragon, you want to write a campaign where there's wild mimic trains. So almost just like things that just span across the countryside that can be seen on the horizon or something. So with our setting, with our holiday, we can load up an example, and there are others. This is not the only place where we can find mountains and coastline. We can go to Japan. We can go to a lot of other places all around the world. Choose a hemisphere. And more in particular, because the concept of this dungeon is that we are going to have our adventurers, and we don't know the level, we don't know the composition of them, but why don't we take our adventurers into a city in this region that is celebrating this holiday? And the holiday will end up being the confines of the dungeon. And let's zoom in more closely on Reykjavik. And if I mispronounce that, I'm sorry. Because here we have a capital city of a mountainous coastal area, and the way that this city is built is going to make sense for people who live in a region like this. And if you choose to have a mountain and a coastline be somewhere else, get an idea for city planning and world building in that sense. Does your city also have a lighthouses, a footbath, the Kavika footbath, various religious institutions here? Does your city apparently have a phallological museum? I better be careful about hovering over, because while it's a museum for educational purposes, I don't know the sensitivities that Twitch or YouTube will have if I hover over the Icelandic Phallological Museum. Where's the placement of piers and hotels and warehouses and parks? And so this can act as a basis for street structure and naming, because this is a beautiful tool that we have. You want to go to Cafe Loki? I don't know if I could trust their prices, though. At least not off of the name. But we're going to make this our dungeon. And how are we going to do that? Well, we don't need to go in and actually just, clip out parts. And I'm not interested in making a one-to-one reproduction of the city. But I do want to use this as this opening part of the workshop to at least get you thinking about resources that you can use. Hi, Lars. Welcome to the workshop. Welcome to the Hero Zone. Gamer Curse, you lost your barbarian some time ago. A rip to Tick. I now play a bard that joined the party, but my DM is starting to hit at me, meeting some people for my backstory that my character used to run with for years. Or to hint. Well, isn't that good? That's backstory development. Chelsea, you've been to Iceland. And Lars, thank you very much for the follow. Question, did I play Final Fantasy X? If so, you would know the scene in the start where they play a blitzball game and a giant bubble of water basically swim through it. I was thinking the same idea, but all over the world, and naturally made floating bubbles of water with sea life and monsters in it. But I don't know how to put it into a map or a game. You just ask yourself, how is the bubble formed? What's making it, or who's making it? How is the sea life getting up there? And if you start asking yourself a series of questions and you just challenge yourself like that, you will be able to find an answer pretty easily. You just got to sit down and ask yourself why. And usually you can get a pretty solid answer if you go back at least 3 whys. So the exercise in this case, Tamashi, would be, there are giant floating bubbles of sea life scattered around the countryside. Why? Because there are spontaneous portals opening up in the water. Why? Because a crashed extraplanar ship is leaking its reality engine into the waters around this chasm. Why? The people who are on board the ship lost control when an experiment they were conducting went wrong. Why? 2 of the researchers were busy comparing notes. We'll keep it PG-13. Let's say that they were in a corner of the lab and were being very studious. They were taking measurements, very, very close measurements. And they were distracted, and wouldn't you know, one of them hit the containment lever. Okay, then you have an entire story onto how you now have free-floating globules of water with deep sea life in them that have been happening for 1,000 years in the middle of plains where there's no water to be found, or like no major lakes or oceans to be found. And you have an entire backstory for it, and it all happened because 2 people got they had a love of science, and they wished to offer each other a peer review. Yes, Lars. Yeah, biological studies, Kitty Bird. I think it was comparative anatomy is the specific discipline that they were. Yep. So Tamashi, just keep asking yourself why, and eventually you're going to get to a point where you go, "I created an entire story." So yes, we're going to use the concept here, and so you can go to Google Maps or wherever you want, and you can start pulling up concepts. And the reason for this is because when we get to our dungeon, we're going to have people who could consist of locals and maybe even those who've traveled outside or have traveled from the outside to come in and explore what's happening and quite possibly be caught up in something that's greater than they are. In our Dungeon Master's guides, it was defining dungeons as places like great halls and tombs, subterranean monster lairs, labyrinths riddled with death traps, natural caverns. Now, due to the geological circumstances of Iceland, there's a lot of this. We could talk about all kinds of things with land and water and not even just like deep Atlantic waters, but we can go into lava tubes and other like volcanic and other such activity. And while this is presented as you either have a dungeon or wilderness, we're going to fuse the two concepts and go, we're going to have an outdoor dungeon. Though instead of being trapped inside a crumbling castle, a series of tubes, such as I've heard the internet be described as, or, we are in claustrophobic confines. If we are visiting, there's an amazing process of discovery to be had, especially if one or more of the characters are outsiders to here. Which may very well be the case because this is a trading center and a part of this holiday is in reverence of people who have come from other places. I have my zoomed out one already here. Who have come from other places in order to trade during this war that the gnomes and the dwarves experienced that involved the half-elves. And so there's already an explanation as to why we have outsiders, if we have outsiders. And they're probably going to be staying in a main city, and they are going to need to stay at some place like apparently this isn't the hotel district. Well, they can go get some KFC, it seems. There's an office supply store, a Domino's. No. The Smoky Bay Guest House. This could be, you know what, there's a story. Why is it called the Smoky Bay? Did something happen? Did something burn there? Is there an underwater vent that actually every so often, or if the tide rolls out, it smokes, and then when the water comes back in, it's suppressed until it, whatever, I don't know. Hey, we're world building. Now, this place is called Smoky Bay for some reason. That could be, it could be based on something like that, or it was just the person thought it was cool. But we have our adventurers. I don't know their level, doesn't matter. I don't know their, their race, their class, their background. We could roll through all that and custom tailor something. But let's talk about the concept of the dungeon. Presumably, they are free to walk about the city in normal circumstances. There's roads. If they're here under, friendly and legal means, then presumably they have the run of the place. If we're gonna have a dungeon, our dungeon does need to have a sense of confinement, or at least a sense of being bound to this place for a while. And at the height of the holiday, we had discussed that there was no going outside from dawn until dusk. And so in this case, light isn't really going to be a problem. or at least in the first part of the adventure or dungeon. Though, wouldn't you know it, as adventurers always do, it would seem... Are you gonna come up? Come on. Don't just claw at me. There we go. It would seem that the adventurers are caught up in a bit of a murder mystery. Because as we discovered, it is a holiday time, but someone very important to the locals, it was just killed, and murder was suspected. There was Mordor. And we have people who might be caught up in it, either framed or they saw something. And what is going to happen is our dungeon is going to be, it could just be some city blocks, honestly. Because if we come over here and we go to, we were staying in the Center Hotels Plaza, 4.2 stars, would recommend. Well, in that, I guess it's a 3-star hotel, but it is also a 4.2-star hotel. I'll let you all work that out. If we're staying here, our dungeon, if there are maybe guards out to make sure that no one is supposed to be walking outside during the day, or if there's not, maybe there's actually a manifestation of some celestial thing. Or the murderers are about, or something. And normally, we would just have spent the day in our hotel. We would be abiding by local custom. We'd be observing the holiday. But maybe we see something because all of our characters might not be used to being just holed up during the day. And you can watch out the window and maybe you see something. Someone could have been traveling from somewhere. And if there's a sense of urgency, we can do a lot of exploring. And wouldn't you know, this dungeon might be confined to this city block, the park, and up here where there was a there we go, a fish company. You know, it is close to the water, so you know they're hey, no, don't eat those minis. Hey, stop that. No, ma'am, those don't belong to you. You don't eat tieflings. Unless you're a villain. Are you a villain? No? Alright, please don't eat the tieflings. Thank you. But what will keep us in the dungeon? Well, if we need to sneak around and move around, either through just natural stealth, trying to be quiet, keeping it low, stay to the bushes, avoid the guards, like in Ocarina of Time, when you're trying to break into the castle and the guards are walking around. Maybe there are civil or civic or religious guards or keepers of the peace who have made a regular route, and you know that if you're caught outside during this holiday, like, that's a big taboo. That goes against a big part of why these people are the way they are. It is in part a war memorial. It is in part a celebration of victory and a recognition of loss. And there's even a hint of the unknown that is included. Especially if we wanted a supernatural presence, like the half-elves, quote-unquote, were actually, alien beings or, celestials that came down and were trying to sow conflict in order to, get a resource or something. We actually worked that into the pyramid and the dead magic zone with things. But anyway, we are confined because we can't travel too far, we can't travel too quickly, and if we're caught, there's a penalty. And in this case, the guards would be moving walls. They would also act as a timer. And as well as our own compelling forces, being the individuals we are, making up the party. You gonna jump? What are you doing? You're just going to sit. Okay. And so the concept is easy. The goal of this dungeon isn't necessarily to collect a treasure, though we might find treasure. It's not to bring down the big bad evil guy, though it might lead to that eventually. This dungeon, which is going to be strewn with the things that we've examined before, we're going to make it pretty straightforward. If you remember from the last segment, there are 7 things that you can consider for your dungeon. Something to steal, something to be killed, something to kill you, different paths, someone to talk to, something to experiment with, and something the players probably won't find. Just going off of those, even if you weren't here for that first part of the workshop when we were talking about the philosophy of dungeon design, already I think you can see that manifest if your dungeon is in the streets of a city, with the pressure being on of various cultural or religious taboos or penalties. Lars is saying, basically, somewhere in the adventure, the players find a classic mimic chest, but it can teleport. If the players kill it, they get a special weapon they are proficient with. And if there are any spellcasters, they will get a weird feeling when they hold it. They're all proficient with the weapon, and if they hit something with it, it just disappears out of existence. Oh, is this this is something that you're planning, Lars? Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I did miss a couple things when I was talking. Good to see, or pretty good idea, actually, to base a dungeon on a real place. Also, I have a plot twist I might want to implement if I want to ask if you can rate it. Oh, okay. And so the twist is this traveling chest. If Lars, if you're making it fun to hunt down, and that the reward is equal to or ample for the hunt and the chase, it's fine to put in. If it makes sense in your world, and it's not necessarily just something that exists completely on its own, there are elements of that, but if you do that too much, everything feels disjointed and like, oh, lol, random. It's okay to sprinkle it in, but you don't want to do too much of it. But especially if you can incorporate it into the story and the setting, I think it could be a great chase around, and they'll get a wonderful reward for going through that. Afterfov says, I was a grocery store vendor and had to go into the store's basement. It was very scary. And so that's something that you might find, that might be the hidden thing. Who would think to go around and and look in those places? But you know what? If everyone's in their homes, no one's in businesses. Well, what have we done? That could be something to steal, depending on the morals and values of the party members, or the necessities. Because if the party needs to get someplace, and they might have moral justification for it, or something is still preventing them, they need to overcome that obstacle, and they need to get to the place they have to go. It could be they saw the suspect or the villain run into, like, let's draw on our real life examples, into a vegetable market or into a vegetable store. Now, they could get in there by breaking the window, kicking in the door. That'll be noticed by the guards when they make their next pass. Maybe there's enough time. Maybe there's a spell or something else that could cover up for them. Or maybe they just don't care and they're going to go in and do it anyway because they know it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. We have multiple routes that your party can take. Something to be killed? Well, they could encounter wild dogs, or just people who are also not observing the holiday and want to take advantage of that, because maybe outsiders during this time who may think that it's okay to walk around, no one really cares as much if they're out during a time when they shouldn't be. And so the guards could be upset, or they'll turn their backs. I don't know. We're throwing out ideas, but let's throw out ideas. Let's let our ideas and creativity flow. But there's plenty that in the basements of shops we've broken into, or even that are walking on the streets, something to be killed or something that will kill us. And if we do want to take into consideration the holiday we are discussing, whether it is a red herring or it's a twist later, what if they actually meet a half-elf that is walking out during the day but actually seems really cool with them and even will help the party as an NPC get around? Pardon. Well, we discussed why you shouldn't go out during the day, and it's because these invaders were illuminated. Think like an eerie glow. Well, in the daytime, there's not really a glow. And these people won't recognize that this is an image, or this is a manifestation of this character that might have been defeated, this villain. Like, we actually created a villain as a personification of a holiday. And they might actually encounter this villain who will go on to trick them or compel them to get to places to do things. And this villain over time maybe doesn't want to go into the dark stores. Say, hey, it's all right. I'll keep an eye out for the guards. And you just, you get in there, do this. I promise I'll cover for you. So the party goes in. This entity might actually kill the guards and try and hide their bodies in the bushes. And if the party's not observant, then they won't see, or the party will see. And if we want this red herring character, or not even a red herring, could just be, honestly, a malevolent force, might try and make up a story, or it does turn into a conflict. But we have something to kill you and something that can be killed in our dungeon already. And you can put the clues together after it continually says, no, I don't want to go in the dark. That's why everyone goes out, because you can see the enemy in the dark because they have this radiant glow to them as a celestial, or it plays into why the magic is being contained in the pyramid. You can go on YouTube, !YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, please do, and thank you, to see the build-up for what I'm talking about now. If you're brand new here, I'm sorry. I'm speaking very quickly about things that you're going, what? Trust me, this has been built up through a series of workshops. You can still ask questions, and please do. Different paths. As long as we're avoiding the guards, or the priests, or just the enemies that actually manifest during the day, because maybe there's no guards, and it isn't. Everyone knows, if you go out during the day, you might as well not, you're never coming back. No one's finding you. No one can find you. No one's ever been found. And it is just asking for trouble. So there could be different paths as well to take in this dungeon. Could we ultimately escape the city? I mean, if we're a super high level party, I could recommend teleporting out, but there is a dead magic zone. Oh, a constriction. Not like a cavern wall or being trapped in the sewers, but it does mean that we can't get around as easily if there's dead magic everywhere. We do have to rely on camouflage, just on waiting out the passing by of the guards, the priests, and or the monsters that come out on this holiday. Someone to talk to. We already discussed it. And it could be guards, even the same ones that hunt you. Maybe not all of them will. One of them will give you a second chance. Like, you don't want to be out here. With the things that we've seen, get back now. Might answer some questions and then go, look, I didn't see you this one time, but if I see you again, I can't just tell someone I've gone off to, use the bathroom or something. So there's already someone to talk to. Something to experiment with. All the locks, the levers, the places that we can find, the out of the way things. Even we can experiment with this concept of dead magic. Because maybe there's a way to get around it. Maybe we saw the suspicious person or thing wield magic. We can also experiment with the fact that, wait, we may not be able to see the glow of these celestial things in the daytime, but what if there's something that we experiment with the dark? What if we try casting darkness and have, as a trap on them? Because as they're walking and passing through, if we cast darkness and they shine through it, aha, that's how we can tell, that's how we can tell who's among us. Dun, dun, dun. Who is among us? And lastly, something the players probably won't find. Look, if we have a city like this, I guarantee you that people have things hidden all over. In their houses, in their places of business. It could be in a safe, under a floorboard. It could be something hidden where if the dungeon extends out to a beach or the sea in some way, there could just very well be buried treasure. And wouldn't you know, the storm that blew in last night that had everyone hunker down even earlier might have washed something up, and the players in your dungeon, if they decide, and maybe they never will, but let's say that they can get away and get all the way up here outside of the normal 4-block dungeon you were planning, and they go digging in here, in the beach, they might find some wreckage or a magic item that, there you go, it's a reward, and for an interesting reason. It could even be relevant to, maybe not the key item if you want to have a concept like that, but it could even help in overcoming this challenge. So with this concept alone in this outdoor dungeon, we already have fulfilled these 7 items on the checklist for a dungeon to have. They all don't need the 7, but they're good to consider. Now, what about the 5-room dungeon? There's more than 5 rooms if we're looking at 4 or 5 city blocks or whatever it's going to be. How does that work? As long as the plot is moving through the 5 rooms, where we have an entrance with a guardian, that could be just escaping our hotel. Not that the whatever, the hotel manager or the bellboy that takes luggage may not necessarily be a tremendous challenge, but if you want to escape without anyone noticing you, that is more of it is an entrance into the dungeon, even though it's exiting the hotel. That is our entrance with the guardian. Or even if it's easy to leave, where we have to go ultimately has an obstacle to overcome. The puzzle or role-playing challenge. In here, this was a corrupt city official can give permits to enter the radiation sector. Well, that's a sci-fi prompt, but it might not be too far off from what we've made in our workshop. And so there is someone that we can talk to in the dungeon who will say, yeah, if you if you want to go to this place, if you think someone's there, I'm willing to look the other way if you can help us out, but don't let me catch you again. And it could be through persuasion or extortion or blackmail or threats of physical violence or bribery or whatever. But that could be the puzzle or role-playing challenge to get ultimately to where we saw this mysterious figure. Then we have our trick or setback over the course of sneaking down the open streets, in between the alleyways. Maybe if the heat's on and there's a lot of activity here, there's a lot of guards or something, we might have to go off of the street and break into the Caldi bar, navigate through the Caldi bar, which should be closed, so we can't make noise, we can't make any extra light or whatever. And if we want to steal something along the way, I guess so, but we need to go through here and find the exit, even if it's up through the roof, to get down to the alleyway behind apartment 29. And then on our way out, we can admire the Albert Einstein and Tupac Shakur artwork. before continuing our parallel, but our sneaky parallel, so that we're not caught by the guards on the street, and we're slipping in between I guess Jazzy's and the Papa Ku bar, and these might be housing or something. Then we get into, oh, you too, Radagast, be well. Yeah, hey, Lars, I want to encourage you all to do this, and we're going to get to the rolls on that here in just a moment. But here's the ringleader, the Goblin Chieftain, the Big Kahuna, Big O, it's showtime. This is going to be the big fight. And where is that going to take place? We have chased the suspect. Or, you know, we're trying to regain our honor, or we're trying to position ourselves as beneficent visitors, or we want a reward or something, and we look for where is the fight gonna take place. And you know what? What if it is here at the Sun Voyager steel boat sculpture beside the sea? So we have a water element, we have a land element. If it's a steel boat sculpture, we have probably, ma'am, stop, hey, a lot of climbing and areas to hide. You could have, you know, while the boat is stationary, presumably, I don't know, is there a picture? Please don't be phallic. Okay, so if we take a look at this, can you imagine all the acrobatics that can take place in a set piece fight against the villain trying to escape on this Sun Voyager? Look at all the twists and turns of metal that you see here. I mean, if you're playing along at home, then I guess just look up Sun Voyager for something more expansive. Then we have the reward and revelation. Here's the sucker punch for the players. The big fight's over. Time to pat each other on the back for another great job, or is it? Does it have to be an actual fifth room? Could it be a plot twist that reveals itself? Well, why did this boss fight, whether it was a level 1 fight, a level 10 fight, or a level 20 fight, because you can still have a lot of high tension and sneaking despite that, especially if there's a dead magic zone or several. Because even though you're level 20 and you can easily dispatch a city guard, is that morally what your character would do? Or is that creating a bigger mess you're going to have to clean up? Because what if a guard notices? And then more guards come, and you kill more guards, and more guards. And now there's a big, pile of bodies. You're like, if only the town guards would stop getting in my way from conducting justice, I wouldn't have to slaughter them. Come on. But a revelation, we can celebrate the victory that this person was defeated in this high-stakes set-piece combat. Did a trap spring? Was there bonus treasure that was uncovered? Because maybe the person melted and it melted away the steel of the ship, and inside the artist 1,000 years ago actually put a treasure chest of items, and for helping the city rid itself of this cosmic horror that actually walked the day and made people afraid to be out during the day, you got to keep the treasure that was revealed? Is it the aliens' language is deciphered, revealing the hostilities were a misunderstanding? Could we have learned something from the Sun Voyager about the elven language from these outsiders? And maybe this person was just trying to get a message across but didn't know the best way to do it, and paid for it with his or her life, but it might lead to an understanding, because that was the Rosetta, or maybe elven blood had to be spilled onto the remains of this really weird ship. And now, we have a Rosetta Stone to speak Elvish, because maybe elves really aren't a thing in our world. And they are just from a different place, and not even the islands next door. the true gruesome meaning behind a national holiday is discovered. Ruh-roh, we know that the elves and the dwarves and the gnomes came together in a great war. They banded together because of the pressures that these half-elves were putting them under. Maybe the important figure died because of this secret. You know, there was a talk about Final Fantasy X a little bit earlier. There is a gruesome truth to a national holiday that you learn about in Final Fantasy X. So if I can invoke that in those of you who know, and if you don't know, play the game. It's fun. It's a great story. But what if finally the story is told from the point of view of the villain who got the whole thing rolling, and the manifestation after the fight is a big public, I don't know, this thing hums now with magic when it's not supposed to, and whoop, a giant hologram of this great hero of the past manifests and confesses to the events, or shows them. And this is suddenly gonna get all the who's in Whoville to come out of their houses, hold hands, and maybe not sing Dabu Dori or whatever the song was, but they're gonna come out and see the truth. And so you won. The villain was defeated. But maybe not everyone's gonna be happy at the end, though this could lead to future adventure, because the last thing this figure does is point to not the Icelandic Phallological Museum, though. I mean, there's a point or several to going there. But might I don't know, lead you in another adventure of a sort, all the way out to the Grotta Island Lighthouse, which is a landmark for Aurora Borealis views, apparently. And Buffy, are these theories or inspiration from real life? What we had done is we had taken a bunch of prompts, we randomly rolled them, and based on the cues from the prompts, we're trying to understand the natural order and how we can observe things happen in a place that is coastal and mountainous, that does tend to be cold, because those were elements of our setting that we rolled up. But there's a lot of fantasy baked into it. So what I'm doing is we're scanning over Iceland, or in particular its capital here of Reykjavik. And I want to show how you can run a dungeon, but one that's not just sewers, not just hallways. We can run an outdoor one in the midst of the holiday that we've been creating in the workshop over last week and this week. Now, the things, the names that we use and other things, maybe the Aurora Borealis doesn't exist in your world. So this isn't really, this isn't a thing. But there's your springboard to your next adventure. And while you did a lot of sneaking around and infiltrating, and maybe you broke stuff or people, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you were found out and chased. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you took all the rooftops. Maybe you actually crawled through the sewer and you had a dungeon inside of this dungeon in order for purposes of navigation. No, Buffy. This is no real world conspiracy stuff. This is all in the realm of fantasy and coming up with ideas from the prompts that we randomly rolled. And you're going to see that process play out a bit here in just a moment. But I'm throwing the ideas out there to help inspire you all and see that if you go through some basic structures, such as the dungeon checklist, or the five room dungeon, even if your map is completely fantasy, you made it all yourself through your own means, and there is no real world connection at all. These are still concepts you can come up with. And I've just been throwing them out on the fly. You all can do this too. And often all we need are some examples to follow to get us, to prime our pump, to stir our noodles and get us thinking. And if you all have been here for a while and you've seen the workshops play out, all of this has been a natural buildup to this point, and you can come up with a fun adventure. Now, if you need something with a little bit more structure, and Buffy just approved, this is no real world conspiracy. I am. it is not. It is not there. Here's our notes on our holiday, and let's consider this. Here's our notes about the settlement that we made that created the holiday and is observing the holiday, or is a place where outsiders, if the adventuring party is made of outsiders, that they will load into during this holiday to celebrate it, and there's going to be a caper during it. So as you can see, there's a lot here, and a lot of this might make it sound like weird conspiracy theory stuff. This was all out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we were just simply trying to connect the points and understand how things like this might happen in our real world and translate it into fantasy. But Buffy, you, me, and probably a ton of other people, we are so sick of having real world stuff drug into our fantasy realms. I want to keep that away. I want to keep those elements. We play in these worlds to get out of that. Doesn't mean that, it's good to know gravity exists so we can consider gravity in our fantasy worlds. But do I need complex gravitational theory in D&D? Do I need socioeconomic realities in real life drug into in a one-to-one aspect into my fantasy? Absolutely not. So there is a detachment between the basics that we've gone over to establish the concept in fantasy, and now we're indulging in the fantasy at this point. Well, after Father, that's why Wizards of the Coast continually seems to step in it. I get it. Here was our villainous inspiration for a holiday, because in order to help us come up with an original fantasy holiday that's not just not Halloween, not Christmas, not Oktoberfest, not whatever, we made a personification of a holiday, which, when aligned with everything else, seemed like this was actually a figure in the history of these people. And so the holiday is more of a historical one, and or a civic one. However, that went on to create a religion, but a false one. Creating false gods, which worked with our completely random roll of the fact that the main religion and religious building is a temple to a false deity run by charlatan priests. And Buffy, in this workshop, we have an effect called Iwi. Some places have Owos, others have Uwus. In fact, we have an Uwu as well. There's an Uwu. But primarily here we have Iwi, IWI, and that stands for It Writes Itself. Our stories have an eerie habit of writing themselves, so it makes it easy to see the connections, which can sound conspiratorial, right? Load the scene of what was it from? It's like the dude and he's got all the charts and the strings and everything around him. It can sound like that, but it's also because we're surrounded by our prompts that we randomly rolled in our other workshops, and our brains need to make sense of this stuff. That's why our gift through divinity and or evolution is that we are storytellers as a species. Like the human Human beings, regardless of where we're at in the world, we are all storytellers. And that is seemingly our unique gift. And so our brains have to try and make sense of this stuff to connect it, which often will write stories for us, where we don't need to agonize and go, oh, how am I going to do this? An outdoor dungeon? How? I don't know. Let's look at all the other notes that we made. And something will actually come from it that will make sense. So that was the personification of the holiday. Now, this was a prior write-up for a dungeon, and we used our Dungeon Master's Guide because, as you can see, much like our worksheets, because our worksheets are built around tables just like this. What did we make in this prior one? The party goal was to win a bet by surviving in the dungeon beneath a temple for a certain amount of time. The dungeon was built by drow. The dungeon boss is a humanoid cultist to a neutral deity. They were put up to the bet by a desperate commoner who approached them in a tavern and urges them into the dungeon. The party is in town because of a harvest festival. And as you can see, we went through at least the 5 rooms of the dungeon. Entrance with a guardian. Fight, persuade, trick, sneak, or magically enter the temple and go underground. So there's an above ground part that we needed to get through to get to the actual underground. The puzzle or roleplay challenge. Navigating the temple, the stores, then open the sealed basement. The stores of food, because this was during a harvest and like a fertility festival in that regard. The trick or setback. Door shuts behind them, sealing them in, possibly needing to survive until the next moon rises and is threatened with ambient poisoning. It's radiant damage. Climax. A big fight with the drow, including a priestess. The reward and revelation. The humans above are the aggressors, and the whole fight was thinking that they sent down mercs to finally kill off the drow after sealing them in. The party is rewarded by the drow with goods and this info so they can go back up and confront the harvest/fertility cult leader for what happened. That can lead to the true big fight. Boom, right here. This could actually almost be relevant for this autumn. Did I make this for another autumn workshop, or was this? I think this was just a random dungeon. It wasn't associated with our seasonal holiday. But we just told an entire story, and you could think about it broadly and then filter in the details yourself. Oh, what a twist! Can we incorporate the things that will be found, that won't be found, the things that we can kill, and the things that will kill us? All of that is there, and look, all it took was, this is large font. We could have written this on one page. We could have had a 1-page dungeon concept here. Now, where did we get this information? Well, in this case, because we didn't have a prompt, such as a holiday, where we know who made the, well, we know who made the holiday. Now, if there's a big twist, dun dun dun. But if you need help with this, go to Chapter 5 in your Dungeon Master's Guide. Open it up right now to page 99. Come on, class. I know you have your Dungeon Master's Guides. Open it up. If you don't have one, go to your friendly local game store and pick one up. I'm sure they'll say thank you. And if they don't, well, shame on them, and they should. And so here, what we probably did was, let's see. Yes. So we must have rolled beneath a temple. And for the dungeon creator, the dungeon was built by drow. So that was probably, oh yeah, elves. And then we rolled a D3 and got drow. We rolled, and then as you can see, this played out. All we did was go step by step through the DMG. What was the purpose of the dungeon? Let's see. Treasure vault, tomb, Templar shrine, stronghold. Death trap, I think, is what we ended up rolling. Now, this is also going to prompt you. We know the answers because we did the holiday workshop. But this is going to prompt you. Who inhabits the dungeon? Are there factions inside the dungeon? What is the history of it? Because the dungeon could be abandoned by its creators, and so they're ruins, or just abandoned, or the original creator still in control. It's overrun by planar creatures. It's the site of a great miracle. What is relevant about this place other than being procedurally generated hallways? Because like, oh, well, all dungeons have goblins in it, and they should have barrels and crates. It's not a very strong reason. Not all dungeons have to have goblins, crates, and barrels in them. Because they serve a purpose, and the party that you're running for is going to want to investigate. Do the crates and barrels say anything? Are they made of any unusual materials? Are some empty and some full? And if so, what are they full of? Clues, 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 because our interest is piqued. And if you don't have those answers, because you just said, oh, you walk down a stone tunnel that's exactly 5 feet wide and 10 feet tall, very convenient, there's crates and barrels. Why? Because I saw it in a video game. Okay. And so there is a story to it. We came in preloaded with our story. But there's a lot in here. I want to go back and urge you. You can roll for this stuff because it's bringing it up as prompts, or you can just think about it and say, you know what, it'll make a lot more sense if we do things this way. But we continued along. All of these are continuous pages in your book. Think about if there's any concealed doors, portcullises. Where is it dark and light? And especially in a holiday that is all about darkness and light, because we're looking forward to the oncoming dark and we want to avoid the light. We could come up with an interesting light puzzle or a trap that involves it. Are there hazards? Think about it. And there's some that are prompted. Wilderness, they're treating as a kind of outdoor dungeon, or it's not quite, because we're still having a confinement, which is really what's tagging this as a dungeon, and not just a hex crawl through the wilderness. But you can see now where we started to build our region and things that we wanted to consider. Buffy says, we live off of stories. It's how we survived. I heard somewhere it started with campfire stories like how I survived a fight with a wolf. Yeah, you got to pass that on, because if you want the next generation to survive like you did, they have to know, if you listen for this, or if you smell this, or you look for some scratches or whatever, if you see the yellow snow, well, if you didn't make it, something else did. And we have to have words and convey that story. Even if it's caveman times Unga Bunga, no go yellow snow. That's how we have come to be at this point. Because someone had to say Unga Bunga, no go yellow snow. Otherwise, everyone who that cave person ended up succinctly birthing into existence wouldn't have. And some of those people might have had major contributions to our modern world. But that person wouldn't have been around if baby Unga Bunga didn't learn the lesson of no go yellow snow and got eaten. Have a good, hello and okay, that was Rip Artist welcoming Chelsea Bell. Chelsea, have a good night and thank you for hanging out as well. So you can see, you can go through this and you can roll for all this. A lot of what I did, I explained, so I guess it's not quite like filling out a worksheet. I even had a blank page ready. I did, everyone. But if you need help with this because you didn't go through other processes to come up with, well, who made the dungeon? Well, in this case, it's the gnomes and the dwarves. And they made it in the face of a great war. And they made it because of these extraterrestrial elves, is what they're called. Instead of aliens, they're called elves. That are these, maybe like Be Not Afraid style, just, we're talking Old Testament kind of stuff happening. Not the super nice, love and peace angels of, dove-winged humanoids or something. And we learned something along the way. So we already came in with a lot of the prompts that you might get from here. But there is so much in your Dungeon Master's Guide. Because as we continue, like here's shipwrecks about what do you do if you want to maintain an airship as a source of transportation for your party? That's in here. You want inspiration for downtime activities, running a business. These are all things that are going to help you make the world come to life. As you describe the sights and smells of the party's first departure into the city, where everyone is out day and night, and everyone is baking bread and cooking stew, and you hear the activity at the docks. Not only is that a vivid first introduction, but that also is creating a standard against which we can measure the deviancy or the severity of what is going to happen. Because now, when you describe that same city that was bustling 2 days ago when you first arrived before the holiday, when they go out during the day, when they sneak out of the hotel, nothing. If it's autumn and crickets are still out at that time, there might be literal crickets chirping. Maybe even during the day, you get it, right? No bread, no stew, and the only place that they might faintly hear sounds would be the docks where the foreigners come in who may not observe this holiday. So they're welcome to stay in this district, but they can't leave for the observation that's happening. But everything that made the world come to life, as we described the sights, smells, sounds, tastes, colors, decorations, because we went through this detail process. Now all of a sudden, it's not that they're completely gone. Where'd everyone go? Or I guess, what's the line from Resident Evil 4 when all the villagers retreat to the church in the beginning? Is it like I guess it's bingo? All the devout have retreated back to play bingo, leaving the party as the Resident Evil 4 parallel as Leon Kennedy to wander around an abandoned village, supposedly abandoned, finding clues and seeing what's going on. And if you want more as well, in the dungeon section which follows, but this is another wonderful place here in creating adventures right before it, which can lead up. And where we saw, I won't read this all to you. You have your own copy of the DMG, or if not, again, support your friendly local game store. Dungeon goals. Where did we get the goal for the example before? That was... it wasn't rescue. Win a bet or complete a rite of passage by surviving in the dungeon for a set amount of time. Can you spend the night in Old Man McGillicuddy's mansion and you'll get the deed to inherit it? That's a prompt for a dungeon right there. So there's dungeon goals, there's wilderness goals if you want to do a hex crawl. There's other goals as well. You can roll up the villain, just like we rolled up a villain for that adventure. allies, adventure patrons, those who would put them up to adventure. The introduction that you caught also in that impromptu dungeon creation. It's right here on page 74. And if you don't believe me, open up your books to it. That might have been this. An NPC the characters respect asked them to go to the adventure location. The adventure climax? Did you need something for... did you need something that would lead up to room 4 or even 5 of your dungeon? Do you need prompts for your villain? Or how about the framing event for something to happen? A civic festival, perhaps? Oh. A fertility festival? I think that's actually the one that we rolled. A full moon, a funeral, graduation of cadets or wizards. A new year, a new moon, a solar eclipse, a violent uprising. If you need help, a book like this can help you. Because if you know the answers to questions that you could be asked, maybe you never will be asked, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to create. And with all the mantic and frantic energy that I'm giving to you now, because you're already comfortable with things, you already have a play space marked out for you through the randomized rolls as inspiration. And sometimes, you budge one over a little bit. You step sideways with the concept to go with something that might be a little more suited to your familiarity or to a challenge to yourself that you want to undergo, so you don't keep falling back to the same old stuff. What's the twist? This is an excellent room 5 of your dungeon. The adventurers have received false or extraneous information. Oh, that the villagers in that one were actually the instigators and the drow were the innocent ones? What a twist. Completing the goal secretly helps the villain. So don't be afraid to look at references. In a book like this, sometimes just start writing and let the story write itself. And other times if you go, all right, look, this isn't Iceland, but you know what I can do? I can still take prompts from Iceland. I can still see how things are working, where the mountains are and the glaciers, the fjords, the inlets. And I can also see how their major city is generally composed. I can extrapolate the prompts that I want, just like these are all points. Like, do y'all want to go eat at Dirty Burger? We can go eat at Dirty Burger. And then we'll wash the Dirty Burger down with Joe and the juice. But we can take this and we can use these as informational points and use data to create information, because the two aren't necessarily linked. Data is not information. And we have our prompts and we say, all right, I want to work with this. And you might take how Iceland looks and apply, you're a big fan of Japan. And you take the structure of Iceland and you want to apply the culture of Japan, and then to top it off, you actually want it to not be in an Arctic or a colder setting, but you can take... You have the infrastructure of Iceland, the culture of Japan, and you put it in a climate like Morocco, where you're not really having to worry about, a lot of snow and ice. And so in this case, the season of autumn is going to have different aspects to it, to the planting and harvesting cycle, to the migration of food sources or other things. But here you have the infrastructure of Iceland with the culture of Japan set in the region of Morocco. Islands, but we're creating a very interesting amalgam of these points of data to turn it into information we're presenting to our players. And now that we're comfortable with that, we can add in all kinds of other data by sprinkling in other random considerations or ones that have been selected off of lists like what you saw in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And thank you very much for the follow here. We have, is that Chimik? Perot? Or if you just want to be called Perot, or you have another nickname, let me know how to best pronounce your name. Goblin of Gygaxanor does not want to go near Joe or his juice. How does one run a world-changing event? That is really going to be dependent on what you're seeking to change, Buffy. Like, what is the current set of I guess ultimately we could say you take the current set of circumstances, and then you look at where you know it's going to go as the DM, and then you choose what is changing along the way from point A to point B. After Fa was discovering an acid pool in someone's house. Chimik Perot. Okay. I thought it was French, right? Because we have Perot. Je parle un peu de français. I took 4 years of it in high school. Although, Perot, high school was a little while ago. So, pardonnez-moi. I will do the best that I can, and I will try. Il fait froid aujourd'hui.
Sound a feasting horn.
Vincent Price movie reference. Goblin of Gygaxanor says, read Stormbringer to learn how to melt your world down into chaotic goo. And also, a thank you to Tinti Rimentiri Clar. Tinti, if you prefer, I don't know if you want the full name, the short, if I'm mispronouncing it. Tinti, thank you for the follow, and also let me know how to interact with your name here. I hope that my discussion and my emphatic this and consider this, and we have to put all the points of light together into a beautiful complex pattern. Well, we look at this and we say, whoa, all right, well, this is a little simpler. We look at that last pattern and we go, whoa, that was a lot, that was amazing. You know what? When that was being made, even this, all these lines, they were drawn one at a time. They were animated one at a time. And that's all this process has to be. If any of you are digital artists, you know this inherently with your system of layers in whichever program you use to create art. Except Paint, which is what I use to create art. You see, I even have a blank canvas here that was ready to go if we needed it. Because I'll throw paint on this, and I'll keep it simple where everyone can do this. I don't get layers, so we're doing it right the first time. Yeehaw! I don't get them fancy layers. Tinty is fine. And so, Tinty, thank you for finding us and joining us here for the workshop. A petition to get me Dungeon Alchemist. I have Wonder Draft. I don't think I have Dungeon Draft. But I do hope that all of you did find this dungeon philosophy workshop to be intriguing and to have a little bit more knowledge about your book, of the Dungeon Master's Guide or other similar books, or even some bravery, because maybe you've never opened up your DMG to page 99 before. Or it seemed daunting because here you had data, but you weren't sure how to turn data into information. And if I can help you do that, that's why I exist here. I'm the weirdo on Twitch, all right? A lot of people are playing D&D, and that's absolutely fine because, look, that's what this channel is meant to do. But I'm kind of the outlier because I love teaching this. And I love giving you things to consider and to put tools in your hands so that you can do the same stuff with all the emphasis and body language and creative energy just absolutely pouring out of your brains, because it is in there, my friends. You have it. As a human being, you are a storyteller, and you can do this. You have a story somewhere in your heart or your mind that is aching to get out, whether it's about melting a world, whether it's about creating an alternate Iceland, which, yeah, there's actually a roleplay system somewhat about that called Tales from the Loop. Yeah, well, Goblin, some of you are here to see cats and cheese. So I am merciful. I provide to those who are in my channel.